is what you see, your reality. We needed a savior, and by our behavior, the ones that were worth it are gone. But songbirds are talking, and runners are walking, a prodigal son's coming.
This was one of the first auditions where I didn't really get a good feeling in the room. Like that was actually really rare for me. Like usually there is a feeling. Like I hear people say that it's always like the one they think they didn't get, they end up getting. I'm like, that doesn't happen to me, but this was the exception to the rule. But yeah, I mean, just lots of times. And the worst is when you like have to do something really emotional and you know that like every blonde that's gone in has been in there for like half an hour and every brunette's been in there for 5 minutes. And it's like, do I even bother? Like, I know you don't want me. Do I kind of go for it or just like, well, I don't know, I still think that works.
For me, it was recently having to read for, I can't remember the director's name, but it was a very sexual sort of comedic role, and I sort of made a really big choice on this one line where I was like, I'm like a wild animal. I was doing this thing, and I was breastfeeding at the time, and I had rings around on my shirt, and I didn't realize. And it was one of those things where they were really, it wasn't apparent, well, it wasn't funny. They weren't laughing. And so it was just one of those crickets, you could hear them after, and I just walked away. I'm gonna look for a movie that has the line of a wild animal. I'm like a wild animal.
Did you get the part?
No, I didn't.
I'm going to open up to questions from the audience in a second, but I wanted to ask you guys, in this film, what for you was the most difficult scene to perform, either from an emotional standpoint or even a logistical one?
It was my first scene. I think the very first scene, with that one killer line, just think of me as yourself only with vagina. I mean, because you know that's the line that's going to be in, that's the snippet. What was hard was, it was the first scene, George was generous enough to be in the next room on the phone. And I knew I was keeping him late, and it was my first day on set, and they'd already started shooting, and you're not familiar with the crew or the cameraman, and so we started the scene, and Jason comes up and he says, are you okay? I said, yeah, I'm fine. He goes, are you sure? I said, yeah, I'm fine. He goes, because it doesn't look like you're breathing. And I said, no, fine. Let's just go. And then he kept coming up, but it's because I had a double pair of Spanx that were sort of suiting me. Not one, but 2 pairs of Spanx. This was about a month and a half after I gave birth, and I couldn't breathe.
I guess for me it was that the crying scene, that breakdown scene. It was like, it wasn't terribly difficult to kind of get to that point, but then like Jason was pushing me to do these like sustained noises and try different kind of squeaks, and at one point he pulled me aside